Hey guys, tonight we begin with the surprisingly structured, brutally honest and often misunderstood life of a medieval prostitute, a woman who contributed to the economy in very practical ways. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up to the gentle sound of someone retching in the alley below your window, which is actually more of a hole in the wall with cloth nailed over it, because glass is for churches and people who get paid more than 4 copper coins a night. The room, generously referred to as a chamber, measures roughly the size of a pig pen. Coincidentally, it smells like one too. The walls are timber, stained, and bowed in a way that makes you wonder if the building itself has given up. The roof leaks when it rains, groans when it doesn't, and one of the floorboards moves with a worrying squelch. You stopped asking why months ago. Your mattress is a lumpy sack of straw stuffed with dreams, back pain, and the occasional flea with a drinking problem. You shift. Something crunches beneath you. You tell yourself it's just an almond from last week's festival that you didn't attend. There's no pillow, just a bundle of rags that may once have been a tunic. You curl it under your neck, scratch at a bite on your arm, and stare at the ceiling beam with the faint hope that today won't involve a friar with a foot fetish and poor hygiene. You say a quick prayer to Saint Mary Magdalene, patroness of your profession sort of, and throw off your blanket. It's damp. It always is. Across the narrow hall, you hear Gertrude finishing her shift. She giggles, then coughs, then mutters something about rats. She's been here longer than you and claims she once bedded a nobleman. No one believes her. But we all appreciate the optimism. The madam's footsteps creak on the stairs. You tense. She's holding her ledger and shouting about unpaid fees, torn linens, and someone using the good honey soap. Again, you get up quickly. No time for self-pity. Not when you're behind on rent, low on rouge, and expected to be downstairs in 10 minutes for your first customer. A city guard with halitosis and a thing for compliments. You've already practiced your flattery. You splash some water on your face. It's cold enough to remind you you're alive, but not enough to make you feel clean. You sigh, straighten your back, and mutter, "Another glorious day in paradise." And with that, your shift begins. You begin your day the way any professional would, trying to remember if that stain on your shift dress is wine, blood, or last night's stew. You sniff it. You regret it. It's stew. Probably. There's a cracked ceramic basin in the corner of your room, filled with water that's been sitting overnight, just long enough to be freezing, but not long enough to grow something. You splash it on your face. It's an instant cure for sleepiness and a reminder that plumbing is something future people will brag about. You reach for a sliver of soap. It's not there. You curse Gertrude again. She's known for borrowing personal items without the courtesy of pretending to return them. Instead, you scrub under your arms with a handful of rough linen and a prayer. Hygiene is optional. Odour is inevitable. Your hair is a mess. That's actually a compliment. You comb it with your fingers, which are raw from scrubbing linens last night, and tie it back with a ribbon that used to be white before life happened to it. You think about putting on makeup, a dab of rouge, maybe some ash to contour your cheekbones, but decide that a tired look is in this season, especially if the client's too drunk to notice. Dressing is simple. You wear the uniform required by city ordinance, a faded red gown that loudly announces, "I am both available and taxable." It's a shade of red that says passion, penance, and legally sanctioned shame all at once. You slide on your shoes, mismatched, cracked, and blessedly yours, and step into the hallway where the air smells like boiled cabbage and bad decisions. Downstairs, you can already hear the madam shouting about unpaid debts and a misplaced loot. You don't ask. Before heading down, you do a quick check in the mirror. Well, the shiny piece of metal nailed to the wall. You smile. It's good enough. You've perfected the art of looking interested while dissociating. It's your most marketable skill. And as you descend the stairs, you're greeted by the scent of cheap ale, the sound of boots stomping mud onto the floorboards, and the unmistakable feeling that someone has already vomited in the fireplace. Welcome to Monday. Your first client of the day arrives just after the church bells finish ringing prime. He's early, eager, and smells strongly of flour and someone who sweats professionally. You recognize him. He's the baker from 2 streets over. Middle-aged, married, and always convinced he's your favourite. He greets you with a crooked grin and a fresh loaf of bread, as if carbohydrates count as currency. Technically, the madam accepts bread. Technically. She's also been eating it in secret and telling everyone your wages are behind again. You usher him into your chamber, which is still airing out from last night's vinegar rinse. He compliments your hair, which is greasy, your skin, which is blotchy, and your dress, which is regulation issue and smells faintly of boiled onions. You thank him anyway. Flattery is the real currency here. He undresses with the urgency of someone trying to win a race no one else signed up for. His tunic hits the floor. His hose sag depressingly. He asks if you remember him from last week. You lie and say yes. He beams. You go through the usual motions. You pretend he's charming. He pretends he's impressive. He lasts about the time it takes a monk to light a candle, then flops over, out of breath and full of compliments. You smile professionally, like a saint who's seen things and no longer flinches. He lingers, talks about his wife, says she doesn't understand him. You nod sympathetically, calculating whether the bread he brought is mouldy yet. Before he leaves, he places the loaf gently on your table like a man offering treasure. It's warm. You can't be mad. Bread is bread. And you haven't had warm anything since last feast day. Once he's gone, you check the coin pouch he left. 2 pennies short. Again. You sigh, pocket it, and make a mental note to add it to your growing tab. You consider nibbling the bread now, but decide to wait. If your next client doesn't show up, it'll be your consolation prize. You fluff the straw-stuffed mattress, straighten your gown, light a bit of dried lavender to reset the mood. A new day, a new disappointment. And that was just the morning rush. With the baker gone, and your dignity mostly intact, you head downstairs for breakfast, or as it's known in the brothel, whatever hasn't been stolen yet. The communal table is already surrounded by the rest of the girls, all in various states of disrepair. Marjorie is picking straw out of her hair. Beatrice is icing a mystery bruise with a cabbage leaf. Gertrude, as usual, looks far too pleased with herself, which probably means someone important paid her in actual coin. You slide into your spot, eyeing the breakfast offerings. A wooden plate with stale bread crusts, a chunk of yellow cheese that's sweating profusely despite the weather, and half a boiled onion. There's also a communal mug of watered-down ale. It's lukewarm and cloudy, like the future. You break off a bit of bread and try not to chip a tooth. Marjorie passes the ale mug. You hesitate. She had that cough last week, the one that sounded suspiciously like plague, but you drink anyway. It's that or eat the onion raw, and you still have clients scheduled. The conversation at the table flows like the River Thames, slow, filthy, and full of odd things floating in it. Gertrude is gossiping, loudly, about a knight who cried during the act and asked to be held. Beatrice claims she saw the mayor's wife sneaking out the back door last night. No one questions it. No one really wants to know. The madam appears suddenly like a tax collector in the fog. She eyes the bread, snatches the last edible bit for herself, and announces that the city inspector will be coming by this week. Groans echo around the table. This means scrubbing, actual mending, and pretending the walls haven't started growing things. You eye the leftover crust and slip it into your sleeve for later. Desperation makes excellent Tupperware. Just as you're starting to enjoy the cheese, possibly mould, possibly seasoning, the bell above the door rings. A new customer. Of course. You chew quickly, swallow even quicker, and adjust your dress so it looks less like you slept in it, which you did. The day has barely begun, and already you're rationing crumbs and contemplating your life choices, and you haven't even seen the priest yet. You're halfway through adjusting your corset with one hand and fishing breadcrumbs out of your sleeve with the other, when Gertrude lets out a dramatic sigh and announces to the room, "Well, it's back." Everyone freezes. Marjorie chokes slightly on her onion. Beatrice mutters, "Third time this season," without looking up from her stitching. "The itch," Gertrude continues, placing one hand on her hip and the other on her dramatically exposed collarbone. "It's come back with a vengeance, like an angry ex-boyfriend armed with a torch and a confession." No one is particularly shocked. Gertrude is a walking cautionary tale wrapped in rouge and bad decision-making. She insists it's from the foreign merchant she entertained last week, the one with the fur-trimmed boots and questionable jewellery. You strongly suspect it was the town scribe. Again. The madam appears in the doorway, holding her ever-growing debt ledger and what may or may not be a bottle of vinegar. "Scrubbing stations are open," she declares, gesturing toward a battered tin basin and a rag that's seen things no rag should ever see. Gertrude struts over like she's on parade and plops herself down with the grace of someone who's absolutely not worried about her pelvic reputation. "Honestly," she says to no one, "at least it's not the pox. That time with the nobleman? Face like a statue, touch like a rash." Marjorie passes her a clove of garlic. "For healing," she mutters, though everyone knows it's just an excuse to mask the smell. You wisely keep your distance and try not to make eye contact with the vinegar jug. You've been lucky so far, or selective, or both. Conversation continues over the sound of splashing and Gertrude humming something disturbingly cheerful. Someone brings up the rumour that a new brothel is opening near the docks. "With real curtains," Beatrice whispers, eyes wide. You all take a moment to dream. Curtains. Beds with mattresses thicker than a pie crust. Clients who don't fall asleep mid-sentence. Then reality returns. Gertrude yelps loudly as the vinegar hits its mark. You wince. The madam rolls her eyes, and somewhere in the distance a church bell tolls, because apparently even God is keeping score today. You grab your pouch, sigh deeply, and prepare for your next client. Preferably one without jewellery, just as you're contemplating a quiet moment to yourself. Maybe a nap, maybe a secret nibble of that crust from earlier. The front door creaks open, and in walks the bishop's nephew. He always arrives the same way. Nervously, clutching a flask of sacramental wine, and with the kind of guilty expression usually reserved for tax collectors and dogs that just ate the roast. He's dressed in clerical grey, with a hood too big for his head, and shame leaking out of every pore. "Peace be with you," he mumbles, because he thinks that makes it more appropriate. "And also with your coin," you reply, smiling sweetly. He insists, as usual, that he's only here for confession. You nod like you haven't heard that 12 times before. His version of confession involves wine, trembling hands, and some rather confused theology about Eve, temptation, and something involving goats that you've never fully understood and are too polite to ask. He always brings a gift. Today it's dried figs wrapped in linen, and a half-hearted poem about salvation. You accept both graciously. You are, after all, a woman of etiquette. You guide him to the back room. He asks if you've been praying for him. You tell him yes. You don't mention it was mostly praying he wouldn't come back. The act itself is a ritual, overly apologetic, surprisingly fast, and punctuated by him declaring he'll never return, which he always does, usually within 3 days. Afterward he lies back and stares at the ceiling like it holds divine answers. You offer him a sip from his own wine. He declines. You take it. One must stay hydrated. He tries to pay you in silver, but the madam only accepts coin from him in person. Something about unpaid dues and ecclesiastical immunity. Instead, he leaves the figs, another prayer, and a small wooden cross. "May God forgive us," he whispers at the door. You nod. He has good reason to at this point. As he exits, he bumps into Gertrude, who winks at him. He stumbles, blushes, and bolts like he's just seen a demon in fishnet stockings. You tuck the figs away for later. They're probably stale, but they're not mouldy, and that's a win. Now, time to air the room and find where you put that garlic clove. The merchant from last night mentioned coming back, and you have a feeling he's bringing feathers. After the bishop's nephew flees the premises like he's late for Judgment Day, you finally get a moment to sit down. You settle by the hearth with your lukewarm ale, stretch your aching feet, and begin to seriously consider stealing Marjorie's garlic clove for your own defence. That's when Beatrice bursts in holding a folded piece of parchment like it's the Magna Carta. "It's for you," she smirks, waving it dramatically. "From your secret admirer." The word secret is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. There are only 6 men in town who can write, and 4 of them are married. One is the bishop. The last one is the town scribe, a man who once tried to impress you by reciting Latin and nearly fell into a chicken coop. You unfold the parchment with the enthusiasm of someone unwrapping spoiled fish. It's written in what appears to be ink, though it could also be beet juice, and the handwriting is ambitious. Some of the letters are backwards. Some may not be letters at all. You begin to read aloud. "O fairest flame, thy hair is red, like stew at night when all are fed. I dream of thee by candle's light, though rats do squeak and bites do bite." There's a pause. Beatrice wipes a tear from her eye. From laughter, not emotion. You turn the parchment over, hoping there's a punchline. There isn't. Just a crude drawing of what might be a heart, or a potato with arrows. The poem is signed only, "Your Knight of Quills," which sounds poetic until you remember the scribe once stabbed himself in the hand trying to sharpen a feather. "Maybe he means well," Marjorie offers, peeking over your shoulder. "Maybe he's just deeply, profoundly bad at this." You consider keeping the poem. Then consider using it to start the fire. In the end, you fold it neatly and shove it into the hearth. It catches quickly. Like most things in your life, it's briefly bright, then vanishes into smoke. Still, part of you finds it charming. Not the poem. That was objectively terrible. But the idea that someone thought of you outside of business hours. You stare at the fire a little longer. Then Gertrude walks in wearing someone's missing belt as a headband and asks, "You going to eat those figs or what?" Late afternoon brings with it the scent of sweat, overripe apples and coin, which can only mean one thing. A merchant has arrived. He's dressed in velvet that's seen better decades, jingling with trinkets that scream, "Midlife crisis by sea route." His beard is oiled, his hat unnecessary, and his gaze lingers far too long on the chandelier that isn't there. He claims to have been everywhere. Alexandria, Genoa, even Paris, which he pronounces as if it were a type of meat. His boots are muddy, his teeth are suspiciously white, and he smells like someone who bathes in perfume to mask something more offensive. He does not ask for company. He demands an experience. The word he uses is exotic. He doesn't elaborate. They never do. "Surprise me," he says, which, in your line of work, ranks somewhere between a warning and a dare. You lead him to the back room that still faintly smells of incense from the bishop's nephew, and begin your mental inventory. There are a few props in the trunk, feathers, a cracked mask, one scarf that's barely held together by hope. Nothing screams exotic. Most of it barely whispers functional. So you improvise. You throw on the scarf as a veil. Add the cracked mask for mystique. Light a candle. You chant a nonsense phrase you once heard a drunk Hungarian say at a fair. It worked on a knight once. He thought it was pagan. The merchant claps, delighted. You haven't even done anything yet. He asks to be tied up. You comply. He requests honey. You offer molasses. He doesn't notice. He mumbles something about forbidden fruit while you try not to laugh. He accidentally knocks over the chamber pot during the theatrics, but considers it part of the ritual. The entire encounter is less passion and more performance art. When it's done, he tips generously. Gold, not silver, which means you'll finally get a full meal that doesn't involve turnips. He bows, mutters something about spiritual awakening, and leaves with your cracked mask as a souvenir. You stare at the door for a moment, then turn back to the spilled chamber pot and the slowly extinguishing candle. Exotic, indeed. By now the sun is limping its way down the sky, and with it comes the unmistakable stench of the tannery next door, a thick, pungent blend of rotting flesh, urine, and crushed dreams. It's as if the air itself decided to give up and embrace decay. The tanning pits are only separated from your establishment by a shared alley and a moral boundary that's just as flimsy. You've grown used to it, mostly. The smell settles on your skin like guilt, and no amount of lavender sprigs stuffed into your bodice can defeat it. Inside, things aren't much fresher. The common room reeks of sweat, spilled ale, and the kind of despair that can only be mopped up with hot vinegar and divine intervention. Gertrude is snoring on a bench. Beatrice is plucking lice from her bodice with the focus of a monk copying scripture. Marjorie is cleaning her teeth with the end of a quill. The quill might belong to your admirer. You don't ask. You return to your room, step over a puddle that might be water, probably not, and collapse onto the straw mattress, which groans louder than the client's. For a brief moment, you let yourself think. Not about the day, or the coins you've earned, or the molasses still in your hair. You think about what you'll eat tonight. Bread, if the rats haven't claimed it. Maybe a boiled root. You consider heating water for tea, then remember you used the last of the firewood 2 nights ago during an overly ambitious bath attempt. The walls are thin. You can hear next door's conversation through them. A merchant arguing with a washerwoman about goats, or maybe debts. Possibly both. A dog barks in the distance. Then someone retches below your window. You wonder if it's the bishop's nephew again. You light a tallow candle and hold your fingers close to it. Not for romance, but for warmth. Outside, the sky turns that bruised purple colour that always feels like the world is about to close for the night. And yet you're not done. The madam's voice echoes down the hall, sharp and unrelenting. Up! Another one's coming! Of course he is. You stand, stretch your back with the sound of several joints giving up, and reach for the wine-stained bodice. Showtime. Again. Night in a medieval brothel is when things truly come alive, by which we mean louder, stickier, and far more likely to result in someone throwing up on your shoes. The alehouse down the lane has just spilled its contents into the streets, mostly drunk men, one bewildered goat, and a lute player with a black eye. They stagger toward your door like moths to a flame, if moths wore half-buttoned tunics and smelled like week-old onions. Inside, the air is thick with smoke, sweat, and the faint whiff of burning something. Could be a candle, could be dinner. Either way, no one's checking. The madam is in full bark mode, directing traffic like a general on the losing side of a war. Gertrude has smeared more rouge on her cheeks than a noblewoman's corpse. Beatrice is passed out with her eyes open, an impressive skill. And you're at your post near the stairs, pretending to look mysterious instead of exhausted. The clientele tonight is a glorious disaster. There's the toothless cooper who insists on singing before anything else. The apprentice mason who wants to practice kissing like the nobles do, which mostly involves drooling and apologizing. And of course, the guy who paid with a chicken last time, and is back to negotiate with eggs. You manage to avoid the worst of them, barely, and end up entertaining a blacksmith who has muscles, manners, and the emotional depth of a door. Still, he pays up front, and doesn't talk much. A win, by local standards. The room is already hot when you lead him up the stairs. The candle sputters, the mattress sags, and you mentally check out somewhere between boot removal and awkward compliments. Afterwards, he falls asleep instantly. You nudge him with your toe. Nothing. He snores like a dying ox. You consider robbing him for sport, but settle for fishing out the rest of the coin and leaving before he rolls over and breaks your ribs. Downstairs, the music has turned to shouting. Someone's playing dice with the madam's rent money. A fight breaks out over who gets the clean goblet. There isn't one. You take a breath, then cough, and the night's just getting started. Just when you think the night has peaked, after the vomiting, the lute string snapping, and the guy who thought tipping was optional if he winked, in walks a knight, or at least someone claiming to be one. His armour is mostly rust, his helmet is missing, and he smells like he lost a joust to a pigsty. He's got a sword, though. It's dull, decorative, and possibly wooden. But he drags it behind him with all the gravitas of a man who definitely talks to it when no one's around. He slams a coin purse on the counter and proclaims he wants to rescue a maiden. The madam, without missing a beat, points at you. You don't even blink. This isn't the weirdest request you've had this week. That honour still belongs to the beekeeper who wanted to be stung emotionally. You lead him upstairs. He insists on taking the stairs valiantly, which involves tripping twice and reciting half of a poem that might be about horses. You nod politely, wondering if there's a saint for patience in this line of work. Inside the room, he demands a damsel in distress scenario. You oblige, sighing dramatically, and pretending to be imprisoned in the corner. He insists on saving you by kicking over a stool and declaring victory. You clap. He bows. The show continues. Then comes the role play. He requests you call him Sir Gilbert the Moist, which you manage with a straight face only because you once had to call someone Captain Nipplehorn for 20 minutes. He recites more poetry, terrible, naturally, and insists on being gentle, despite your insistence that speed and silence are virtues at this hour. Eventually, things proceed. He's surprisingly nervous. You guide him gently, like one might guide a lost sheep or confused town official. Afterwards, he hands you a gold coin and a small pouch of herbs from his quest. You're 80% sure it's dried grass. He bows deeply and exits with a flourish, tripping one final time on the curtain. You sit for a moment in silence, then burst out laughing. Sometimes, absurdity is the only thing standing between exhaustion and existential dread. You pocket the coin, and toss the herbs out the window. The noise has finally begun to die down. The lute player's passed out with his instrument cradled like a child. Gertrude is face down on the hearthrug, possibly dreaming of bishops. Beatrice is upright, but definitely unconscious. The madam is counting coins and muttering curses in 3 languages. You recognise at least 2. Your room is quiet now, save for the rhythmic drip from a leak in the ceiling, and the occasional creak of old wood regretting its life choices. You light what's left of your last candle, a stub that smells vaguely of animal fat and desperation, and set it on the table. The floor is cold, your feet are sore. You remove your bodice with the delicacy of someone defusing a bomb and collapse onto the straw mattress that has now become your closest friend and worst enemy. Just as your eyes begin to close, there's a sound, a tiny squeak, followed by another. Rats. Again. You sit up with the speed of a crusader hearing the word relic. 2 beady eyes reflect the candlelight from under your trunk. Bold little devils. The one on the left has a scar. You've named him Rupert. He's practically a tenant at this point. You toss a stale crust in the opposite direction, and Rupert scurries after it, dragging his tiny pride with him. His friend follows. You make a note to set another vinegar trap tomorrow, knowing full well it'll fail like all the others. Downstairs, someone groans. Then silence. You lean against the wall and exhale slowly. You're bone-tired. Your hair smells like smoke. Your back feels like it's 300 years old. And your soul, well, it left about 4 clients ago. And yet, there's a strange calm in this hour. The clients are gone. The madness paused. The city outside is dark and still, like the world's holding its breath. You eat what's left of the figs the bishop's nephew brought. They're dry. Possibly older than you. But they're sweet, and they're yours. You lie back down and pull a blanket over yourself. Thin, fraying, but better than nothing. Tomorrow, it starts again. But for now, You let your eyes close. Even a medieval prostitute gets a few hours of peace, assuming the rats don't start a duel. At last, sleep comes, not gently, not gracefully, but like a sack of flour to the head. Your body gives out before your mind finishes listing everything that aches. Your dreams, as always, are absurd. You're in a castle, somehow clean, wrapped in silk, and reclining on a bed that doesn't crunch when you move. There are grapes. There's music. A man with all his teeth is reciting poetry that doesn't rhyme love with dove. You sip wine that doesn't taste like boiled socks. It's bliss. And then, naturally, someone starts screaming. You jolt awake, smacking your head against the low beam above your straw mattress. The same beam you forget exists every single night. You curse under your breath, already knowing who the culprit is before your eyes adjust. Gertrude. Again. She's outside your door arguing with the madam. Something about a nobleman, a missing shoe, and an accusation involving 2 ducks and a chamber pot. You try to ignore it. You bury your face in the straw, but that only earns you a nose full of hay and something that might be a beetle. The screaming continues, followed by a crash. Then someone yells, "You said you were barren." Ah. So it's that kind of night. You sit up, eyes bleary, heart pounding like you've just survived a siege. You consider going back to sleep, but the odds of that now rank somewhere between unlikely and only if someone hits you with a lute. The candle is out. The air is cold. Somewhere in the darkness, Rupert the rat is chewing something that sounds suspiciously like fabric. Probably your good shift. You get up, wrap yourself in your cloak, more patch than cloth, and poke your head into the hallway. Beatrice is sitting cross-legged at the end of the corridor, eating a turnip like it's an apple, and watching the chaos unfold with all the concern of a cow chewing cud. "I give it 5 more minutes," she says, gesturing to the brawl. "Then someone gets slapped with a candlestick." You nod, sigh, and return to your bed. Dreams are clearly off the menu tonight, but if you're lucky, the madness will quiet soon. And maybe, just maybe, Rupert will leave your sock alone. Dawn peeks through the shutters like a nosy neighbour with terrible timing. It's not golden or gentle. It's grey, cold, and smells faintly of mildew and regret. You sit up slowly, because moving too quickly might remind your spine that